You are listening to the Run the Rack Outdoors podcast, where we take an all-in, leave no doubt approach to all things adventure hunting. From the big woods to the high country. How about that? Let's learn together as we discuss with our expert guests on what it takes to be successful in the backcountry. I'm your host, Weston Homa. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. This week, I got on Aron Snyder. So I'll be honest, I was really stoked for this one. Aron has been one of the people that has taught me so much about how to get started Western hunting, backpack hunting. About 5 years ago, when I first started going out west, I think one of the first podcasts in general I ever listened to was the one he used to do with Kafaru called Kafaru Cast. I mentioned in the episode, Aron has probably taught me a lot more than he realizes. Such a absolute killer. And again, it was just awesome to have him on. I wanted to dive into kind of the little backcountry basics that people like to overlook. Seems like nowadays, everybody just wants like that grip and grin, but a lot of people don't have the discussions around knot tying, woodsmanship, land nav, and I could think back to old episodes he used to do, and those are the kind of episodes that help me a ton. So we get into all that. I think it's a great episode covering all backcountry hunting basics, and we really chop it up well. So thanks again, Aron, for hopping on. Really enjoy the conversation, and I think everyone listening is going to like it as well. Other things I got going on. So obviously I'm back from Idaho. I'm putting together a hunt film from that bear hunt. I think it's coming along well. I'm hoping to get that out here the next couple weeks. And then I also did draw Colorado archery deer. Can't remember if I mentioned this on the last episode, but officially have that Colorado archery deer tag. So the first half of my September is going to be up chasing high country mule deer there. And then the second half of September is going to be hunting the elk rut in Idaho. And I already have that tag. So my September is really coming together. My entire fall, really, because then I come back and hunt whitetails and bears back east here. And I just feel so blessed. I'm so excited. Also here in the more near future, I'm officially 2 weeks out from my big marathon this year. So I'm running road marathon, Duluth, Minnesota, Grandma's Marathon. I just wrapped up another huge training week. The goal still is trying to get to Boston 2026. So going to make sure we do that. Try to overtrain for the goal. That way, hopefully on race day, it's a little bit easier at least. But I'm officially on my taper now, which means I start focusing a little bit more on recovery. Still running here and there, but pulling things back and just trying to get myself in the best possible form and feeling good and everything for race day. So that's in 2 weeks. And I just wanted to say, too, I've been helping a lot of guys with just getting into not just running, but physical fitness. I've helped a buddy run his first marathon. I'm helping another buddy run his first half marathon that's coming up. So I just love helping people, sharing what works for me. I'm also a NASM certified personal trainer. So I can really help anybody listening here that is interested in any of those things. So feel free to reach out. You can shoot me a DM on Instagram. If you go to my blog website, there's a contact form there. So I don't charge anything or whatever. I just really love helping people achieve things that maybe they thought they couldn't do. So yeah, feel free to reach out if that interests you. So 2 weeks out from that race, and then I am now then officially 2 months out from Eastern States 100. So this will be my first 100-mile ultra marathon. I've done a handful of other ultras. I've competed in some. I got first place in a local 36-miler. I did a 70-miler last year, but this will be my first 100. And I think that's pretty much it. So everybody, thanks again for tuning in. I hope you enjoy this one with Aron Snyder. He's the guy, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to mountain hunting. So I was excited for this conversation. I think it went really well. Let me know what you guys think, and I hope you enjoy it. So that's it. Let's have another great week this week. Let's get after it. Let's give it all we got. Let's leave no doubt, and let's run the rack. All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Run the Rack Outdoors podcast. Today I have on Aron Snyder. And if you're listening to me on this podcast, you probably know who this guy is. So I don't know if we need a whole big introduction, but Aron's a guy. He's been in the industry for a while. I've been listening to him on podcasts for years now. And yeah, how's it going, dude? I know you were out bear hunting recently. Then, like, we were trying to get this schedule. You're bear hunting, then I was bear hunting, and I'm just stoked to sit down with you. So,
Yeah, no,
how's it going, dude?
things are good. The worst thing that happened to me this morning, I snapped my fly rod in half on probably the largest fish I've ever had. Not in half, it broke just above the butt. I had a couple hours to fish, so I ran out. So I did catch several fish, but I broke my rod and, cried on my pillow and hiked out and came back home and went to the gym. So yeah, no, everything's good, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, for sure. And for people that might not know, because I got, a lot of guys from back east too that haven't hunted out west. They're still trying to figure it out. Like, I talk to guys and answer questions and stuff. If you want to give a little intro about who you're hooked up with now and everything like that, go ahead and fire away.
Yeah, so Aron Snyder, I'm actually from Oregon originally, 200-person town, pretty much raised in a logging community, been hunting more or less since birth. Been working, I guess, in the outdoor industry for, I can think about that, at least 15 years, I guess. Yeah, I do a lot of design work from broadheads to boots to clothing. Right now I work for, and have been for the last few months, for Born Primitive Outdoor. We do CrossFit, outdoor clothing, and tactical. I'm a photographer. I've got a podcast. I do a lot of survival training, things like that. And I definitely have spent probably more of my life sleeping on the ground than in a bed. So I've backpack hunted quite a bit. So yeah, that's the quick version.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. And really, dude, like, I'm just so pumped to get you on. Like, a little bit about, like, me. I started hunting the West about 5 years ago. I grew up hunting and everything like that. And I can remember first starting to try to figure this out, bought an over-the-counter elk tag with my old man, and that was like our first trip. And not knowing what the hell to do, but knew, like, I grew up hunting whitetails in a tree stand, and then, like, mountain hunting sounded just badass, frankly. And I remember thinking, like, oh, I can hike around and actually go find the animals versus staying in a tree. Like, that sounds exciting.
Yeah.
And I remember my neighbor who'd been hunting the West for, a good handful of years prior was like, all right, well, I can tell you one thing. You're going to need a framed pack to backpack hunt and pack your animals out. And there's a lot to it. So recommend, at the time you were with Kafaru, and it was like, recommend a Kafaru pack, and then you got to check out this podcast, Kafaru Cast, this guy, Aron Snyder. He'll teach you everything you need to know. And I was like, okay. And I think at the time, dude, I didn't even know what a podcast was.
Yeah.
Like, it might have been one of the first podcasts I started, like, listening to. This was probably like 2019 or 2020. And then, honestly, man, yeah, I was like a sponge, listening to all your stuff. I mean, I still, throw on your stuff now, but I knew this is kind of what I wanted to get into. And you probably don't realize it or not, but you've taught me a ton, and I know you've helped a lot of other guys too. So I just wanted to thank you, even right off the bat, like, for just being such a great resource in the industry and everything like that. So
no, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I've recently got into fly fishing, and I'm you on that side of things. I mean, I've fly fished before, but this sponge thing, like listening to tons of podcasts and watching YouTube videos on different setups and, whatever. So and I've talked about that on podcasts where it helped me remember, because you get stuck in your own bubble, I guess you could say, and I forget what it was like to, I mean, not say not know anything, but for it to be all new and exciting again. Because, now I kind of just, let's go back. You know what I mean? I've done it so much. And so it's kind of cool to be on the other side of the fence. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of what's cool, like, about, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of shit, like, with social media, and a lot of it's trash. But, like, I mean, how cool is it? You can kind of just, like, flick on a podcast or a YouTube, or like if you use the thing right, like, you can learn a lot and figure a lot of shit out. And you can learn it from people that are, like, good at it, not just like your your Uncle Dave that's like fat
It-
and you're trying to get advice on how to get a six pack. Like that doesn't make sense.
yeah,
Like you
no,
can
I
go
mean,
listen to like
it's
a
the same thing
yeah
with fishing. There's a lot of bad advice and there's a lot of good advice, right? So I kind of picked two or three people to listen to that, on the fishing thing. And that's kind of a good, I mean, one of the things I tell people is like, you don't have to listen to me, but pick who kind of, aligns with your maybe thought process or intrigues you to listen. So you want to keep listening. You don't want to listen to a sleep aid, right? Somebody boring. So, but you don't want to have too many cooks in the kitchen. You really want to kind of, have a couple people that you hone in on and maybe not emulate, but mirror what they're teaching and stick with that. Otherwise, you can go down so many different rabbit holes in backpack mountain hunting, because you've got like the ultra lightweight crowd, and then you've got the I'm going to carry everything crowd, and then you've got the crowd that kind of fakes it a little bit, So you got, whatever. It's always good to kind of just, yep, I'm going to follow these couple people or whatever, and then it's also good it's easy to go back and find their info, when you're trying to hone in on something maybe you forgot or whatever else. So
yeah totally. And actually, that's a good point too, because like at the time I was cranking out those podcasts, listening to because there's so much to it, especially starting out. And then until you go, then you're going to learn more of like what you actually need to know and get experience. And that's obviously the best teacher. But I'd listen to those, and then for a while, even before then, you were on,
gritty.
the Gritty
Yeah.
Bowman with Brian. And for people still listening, like when I say Aaron was a great resource, I remember listening to those episodes. And shit, that's what's cool too. You can go back and listen to them now. You listen to those episodes, and you could hear. I remember you could hear your cell phone like buzzing, like throughout the episode with Brian, because you would just give your cell phone out to people
Yeah.
and just help people get started. So I don't know. Long way of saying of like is like, I'm one of those guys that was listening and had a lot of that advice. And over the past 4 or 5 years, this is just it's my passion. It's my absolute passion. I've been able to like now travel out west for trying to do like a couple hunts a year. I guess I'll have 3 Western hunting tags this year, and yeah, I just love it. So
Yeah. No,
again,
it's cool.
yeah, appreciate it,
We're
dude.
spoiled out west for sure. I mean, I moved to Wyoming. I'm even more spoiled now than I was as far as like, well, this morning I ran and yarded, 4 or 5. I can't remember. I lost one. You know, running streamers for brown trout this afternoon. I'm heading down, to fish, we throw my raft in and fish a lake. And then tomorrow I'm backpacking in to go set up game cameras for elk. So yeah, it's good. And the thing like with the backpack hunting is, there's so much to it, but there's also it's super simple. There's like it is daunting at first, but the reality, you put one foot in front of the other and head in there. You're probably going to suffer a little bit, but there is a lot to learn. But it is fun to learn it along the way. So like I don't my buddy plays golf. He calls it whack fuck.
Yeah.
So I've never played golf, but we always whatever bullshit talk or whatever. Where you go play golf, there's different courses and whatever, but like it's pretty much you're going to a course and you're going to hit a ball or like there's so much other shit involved in backpack hunting. I mean, you have fitness, which is a big part of it, and then you have the gear portion of it, and then you have the woodsmanship and the animal behavior, understanding animals in general, stuff like that. And so, for me, obviously, I started young, like 14. Like I about gave my mom a heart attack because I was backpack hunting at 14, by myself. And so, as you do it, and I've definitely been accused of being arrogant, which I totally understand. But the one thing is, when I'm giving advice, it's because I've screwed stuff up so much myself that I'm very confident in what to do now because I have fucked up everything humanly possible multiple times. Kind of like touching the stove. And so then you screw up enough and you become very, I guess, steadfast in different things that are do's and don'ts, and, a lot of people that are green, when they first get going, and you'll see it on forums and stuff. I don't get on them anymore, but somebody goes and hunts 4 or 5 times like you out west and they hunt elk and they got a decent, grasp of like what they're doing, but then you throw in a different dynamic. You go up to 1,000 feet in elevation, or you go to Idaho or the Pacific Northwest where it's rainy and the elk are different. And so it's always different everywhere everywhere you go has its own problem. I would say like Colorado, there's no underbrush. Weather's not that bad. You got to deal with altitude. And you're going to have a lot of friends, or there's a lot of over-the-counter public land hunters. So, you go to Idaho, northern Idaho, right? You've got a rain problem, you've got a deadfall problem, and there's always different dynamics to it. So
yeah, and that's why I'm a huge. I tried to make sure because I was talking to a guy at work. I planning to hunt next year for the first time, like with his buddy and his dad. And like this is a good example. Like he was looking at like clothing systems and stuff, and we were bullshitting at work. And he was kind of telling me like this whole kit he was going to buy, like a puffy and like pants and like a base layer, and it was from influencer who shall not be named. And I'm like, well, dude, like make sure. Maybe this is like a good nugget for life. Not that I have everything all figured out, but like you're going to go hunt late season elk in November in Montana. Pretty sure that dude with like, the clothing kit you're going to buy, what he always runs, pretty sure that dude's a bow hunter.
yeah.
And what you're going to need for early September is not what you're going to need for November. So make sure whoever you're taking advice from has done the exact same thing that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I tried not to sound like an expert, but I just go back to be like, dude, here's what I've done. Here's what worked for me. If you're doing that kind of hunt, I might not be like the best guy or, whatever.
Well,
but I think that's important too.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is like, it's always, obviously even, going 5 times is, pretty good experience, right? I mean, you've learned some shit for sure. And, the thing, like when you go, like it's how do I put, like, how would I explain this? So I always say like the military prepares their next war for their last one, and so hunting is the same way. Like, let's say you carry too much gear the first time, then the next time you're probably not going to carry enough, or you had horrible weather one time. And so you pack for that, and then it's 70 degrees the entire time. And, so it's always, changing inevitably. Mother Nature has a good way to stick it in and break it off occasionally. So the cool thing, I guess, like with the elk hunting, side of things, it's getting less and less now. It is, more available, right? Like whitetail, if you don't have property in a lot of areas, there's not a lot of public land in a lot of places, right? Where with elk, even if it takes a couple of years to draw, you're going to have an adventure for a lifetime.
Yeah, totally. And I think there's still a ton of opportunity. I mean, I hear guys on podcasts that really start like, and I get it. Like, there's more people getting into it. There's more crowding. Tags are getting harder to get. But, like, I don't know. Come on, dude. Like, there's still a ton of opportunity. And, like, are you going to have a chance at a big, like, 350 bull? Like a lot of people that, it seems like everybody's doing on Instagram at every single general unit. Like, maybe not. But, like, I don't know, dude. There's still a ton of opportunity. But, like I said, dude, this has been, like, really found, like, my passion with this. And helping, and I'm trying to just kind of like pass it along, just help other guys that are also getting out, and kind of all stemmed from a lot of what you've done and things like that. So yeah, you're definitely somebody I've kind of looked up to with all of it. And
you had a lot of good guests, though. Like I pay attention, as much as my ADD brain lets me, but you've had a lot of good guests, on the podcast. And the thing, like, yeah, I mean, I get like forums are not totally horrible, but there's a lot of, like, I can't be on a forum now because I'm just not going to argue. I'm not going to get on there and because I'm just not, because I've done it enough. There's no reason for me to argue. So but like the informational side, like you look at like the YouTube side of things, there is a lot of good info on there, and again, like, you're going to learn by listening to someone, even if it's you learn the hard way. Meaning, I'd listened to a podcast and a guy was talking about, basically he didn't carry a headlamp or rain gear because he'll just walk out, the lightweight thing or whatever. And, I had a lot of people message me what I thought about that. And I'm like, man, I think that's the dumbest shit you could possibly do. And I said, but there's sometimes I don't bring rain gear. The weatherman's generally accurate enough. I got enough pain tolerance to suck it up through some rain. And I'm like, but when you go out, there is some things you certainly should have. You can do without rain gear and probably be okay. You're going to be wet, but like a headlamp at certain times is not something you really want to be, without. And until you get stuck without a headlamp, that's when you really never go home without one. Or in my case, I bring two. Last year, well, it's my ex-wife now, but like this goat here is the one she shot, and it was one of those things. It was I ended up carrying a bunch of weight. We were going through some pretty rough terrain, and it got dark just because we were going slower. And that was the first time she realized about how the importance of, it was sleeting and snowing, of the reality of if she didn't have a headlamp and I had to give her mine and I couldn't lead through the cliffs, there's a high probability of staying overnight and, quite possibly a very dangerous situation in the most miserable night anybody would have ever had from a headlamp. They're like $29. I mean, you can spend 89, but like it's a very small thing. And even like the battery thing, putting brand new batteries in, having a backup set, like all these little things don't really matter until they really fucking matter. And when they really matter is something when you'll never forget. And I mean, I have guys message me all the time that have had a really, really bad experience. Like, I didn't listen to you or, whatever. And Barklow's another guy. It's not like we're preppers. It's just with what Barklow has done and in myself, we have a lot of the same methodology. As he's done so much stuff, like the chances of getting soaking wet falling in a river, not great until you fall in a river and soak your shit. And then that one time may only happen once in your entire life, or it happens to your buddy and you're with them or whatever. That makes you, and I call it now the Taken syndrome. I don't know if you remember that movie Taken with Liam Neeson, where he's like super paranoid all the time. You do get that syndrome. And my ex-wife had said, she's like, I understand why you are the way you are now. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, why you lay out everything and pre-check it 3 times, and why you're so diligent about certain things, because until you experience some pretty bad situations, you don't have that much to worry about because it just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. And I like how you brought up Barklow, because that's kind of like, and this is all good, kind of what I wanted to get into. So I can remember the biggest thing that kind of helped me too was kind of these episodes looking back when I was first starting out, and I still flick them on. They're just episodes like this and stuff, is when you and like Barklow would get on and chop it up about, woodsmanship and like the basics, like in the backcountry. Like everybody's just so obsessed with like doing whatever. Like they just want like that grip and grin of like 6x6 or whatever. Yeah. But it's all these like little things we're talking about for just becoming a better woodsman. And you guys would get into it about like knot tying and land nav and just this little shit, like this headlight example is a great example, and just all these things. And I can remember like listening to that shit and being like, well, yeah, man, I mean, I grew up in the outdoors and doing all that shit. And then, but when you start talking about specifics of like a taut line hitch and a bowline knot and just the basics of like land nav, it really like put in perspective of like, are you honest with yourself? Do you actually know this shit or not? So, dude, it like forced me to really, get on, like, to really explore this stuff. And I actually and I don't care where you are, if somebody's listening, like, how do I start or how do I learn this stuff? Like, I found a survival wilderness school. I'm outside of Pittsburgh, and there's one here. I took an intro basics, like, weekend land nav course. And
Dave Canterbury,
shit like that.
Dave Canterbury's out of Ohio. He has an amazing multiple level course. You can find them. They're everywhere. There's far more where you're at than where I'm one of the only guys teaching them out here. There's far more back east and in the Midwest, back east specifically, than here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also know too, because like you put on, it looks like you just did one of those like backpacking camps with Born Primitive. Yeah. So just kind of going over, I'd love to like dive into kind of all this stuff. Like what are some questions? What are some common things people are asking there?
Well,
some things that some of the basics you're showing
the
people.
The number one thing I got back from that, I mean, I had 4 people say, the number one thing I learned from this is there's multiple levels of hunters and backcountry hunters. And until you go to one of these courses, you don't realize the level you're actually at. And that's not, hyperbole or I'm not trying to make me or my instructors sound better than they are, but so if we backpack in, I'll give you a prime example, because we do a lot of scenarios that make you wake up. So we stop and I'm like, okay, Weston, you were cutting up an elk and you just hit your leg. I don't know if it's arterial or not. What do you guys do? Like, we need a bird. Can we get a helicopter in here? Do we get horses? How do we get a hold of them? What's our location, wind direction, cloud cover? What do we need? Like, none of them fucking really know, right? And so I'm like, okay, so your friend's going to fucking die because you suck. Like, he's going to die. And so then we go through scenarios like that. And I'm like, all right, everybody empty every bit of technology out you have. And I'm like, okay, so we have, in 15 people, we have 13 GPSs, and not one of you motherfuckers can read it. Not one knows how, right? And I'm like, okay, so now I start breaking that down and we teach, right? Then we show them how to do that. And then we'll go over to the cliffs and say, all right, this guy just fell. He's got compound fracture. He's got bones sticking out both sides. This is very realistic in hunting. And I'm like, so what do you do, right? And then do you move them? Do you not move them? Like, and, we go through like, okay, well, you could make him much worse moving him. So you're going to have to basically, treat him place, right? And you're going to have to get him warm and make him feel fuzzy. And you're going to have to basically, stabilize him in place. And then we show you how to do that. And so we go through, or, all right, well, you can't, like a dead man anchor, which is very simple, but like, okay, your stakes aren't long enough, your tent's the high wind and you're blowing down. So we were like, all right, we're going to show you how to do a dead man anchor. We're going to show you how to do a repair on a specific piece of gear. I'm going to show you how to belay down, meat down a cliff, whether that be to lower it down to keep it away from marmots and bears and shit, or you're in the cliffs and you took a wrong route and you're either cliffed out and you can lower it down and then climb down. I'm going to show you how to belay that down. With what gear is on you. I'm not talking about ropes and shit, but like being able to do it with 550 cord or whatever. And so we do it a very realistic scenarios on these. So one, we open your eyes, and then two, we fill you with the knowledge. And I'm not the medic guy. I know enough to be dangerous, right? So we have people that are very specialized in each thing. And then on the land nav side, we definitely go through, well, in the actual land nav class, that's much bigger. But like on these smaller ones, we go through the most pertinent stuff that we can. And again, we try to make it as realistic to everything I have faced or someone else has that you're going to run into. So it's again, water, right? I get made fun of for that walking stick, that ice axe walking stick all the time. Like, what are you climbing Everest? And so then we get out there and I'm like, all right, well, first I'm going to show you, like, my bed is, I can't find a flat spot. I'm going to dig a bed out with this ice axe and you're going to do it with your feet. And we're going to see who wins, because I'm going to win because I got this goofy ass ice axe. And then I'm like, all right, now I'm going to show you water, and we'll find an area with a seep and I'll dig a seep, and I carry a lot of times plastic tubing, and I make a faucet with that to show them, like, this, now I got a water source, even though it's not, just cranking. Now I have a way to put a Nalgene bottle under this. And then, contractor bags, another good example. I'll set up a contractor bag, for 2 weeks prior to the season, 3 weeks, in a seep for the water to collect in that, so I can purify it out of that for a collection point. And that contractor bag can be used from everything for rain gear to everything else. Although you haven't hit the lowest of lows until your buddy's seen you putting a contractor bag over your body and cutting a hole in the top for rain gear because you're dumb shit and you forgot your own. But, those are all the things that we try to go into. And it's really, again, like, very applicable. When you see some of these survival courses where there are bow drill fires, that's not real applicable, right? That's not, if you're into that, that's cool. Or making wicker baskets and shit to catch squirrels. That's not what we don't do that, right? I mean, we'll teach bow drill fires every now and then, but we teach more wilderness living. And so when I say that, meaning you have X amount of gear, and we teach you to use that gear to the fullest extent you can, and what gear you may want to add or take away. We go through the gear lists, all that type of, so I'm rambling on now, but we cover as much as humanly possible for somebody to go backpack hunting. And I mean, even traveling, right? People, when they travel, what do I put in what bag? How do I carry it? What do I, what goes in the carry-on? What goes in the check bags? The cheapest way to fly, right? So sometimes it's cheaper to book first class because you get two 70-pound bags when you book first class. So, even if it's $150 difference more, well, you get to ride in style and you get two 70-pound bags, right? And then when you come back, you can mail your gear back, but you can put your animal in those two 70-pound bags and ship your gear back. So you're shipping 40 pounds, 50, 60 pounds of shit, depending upon how much food you ate and everything else. But now you're freezing, if you can, freeze it. People like do coolers. And I'm like, you're flying back, you're there in less than a day. Freeze it and throw it in a duffel bag. It's not going to thaw, and you can just wheel on 140 pounds. And people are like, I don't think that's true. And it's like, look, I fucking have done it, right? I'm telling you.
Yeah, there's a reason you're saying all this shit.
So, and that's where I try to help out because it's also a cost effective way. So like, you imagine if you go out and you have 12 days worth of food. So you've got whatever, well, with 12 days, 30 pounds or whatever it is. So with that, I'm like, hey, you can ship back, right? Whatever, very slow snail mail, UPS, whatever, ship back your gear if you have to, or figure out what a third bag costs. So now you got one, two 70-pound bags, 140 pounds of meat. And I mean, no matter what anybody thinks, you don't get 300 to 400 pounds out of elk very often, right? If you shoot a 3-year-old bull, you're looking at 150 pounds of meat. So, you take the prime cuts, the best you can. And then if your buddy's with you, okay, he gets some burger, right? But you can get the majority of it back in two 70-pound bags. So even as that base level of instruction, we teach that as well.
Yeah, cool. Definitely sounds like some really cool camp to check out if you're listening and want to go see those things. You're still doing them, right? Or you have more scheduled?
Yeah, we're getting ready to announce the next one. We're kind of debating on, do we do a real dick kicker, like a more of a level 3 type course where we go in 10, 12 miles and it's very realistic to like really more of a high country mule deer hunt. Most people probably aren't going to be going in 12 miles for elk, right? But, where maybe you're stopping halfway in, staying the night, and then also kind of we go through the stalking portion of it too when you're in, because we go into the high country, right? We'll be at 12,000 feet. So we'll go into kind of like, all right, well, this is where I would camp, in this scenario, this is where I glass from, this is my approach I would take. And, we're actually looking at deer because deer are living where we're at. So we go through, everything. And a lot of it too is, the more, in fact, Petra, the lady that owns Hilleberger, runs it, used to give me a rash of shit because I would run their, 3-season tents into shit I shouldn't have been using them. But, I was prepared enough and very aware of the precautions plus guying out tent lines. And that's another thing. Most people don't even know how to set up a tent correctly. I was with a guy on a goat hunt last year.
Dude, yeah.
And he had his guy lines going in, so the tent was sagging. And I'm like, dude, pray to God, thank God we didn't have high wind. I'm like, dude, just Google setting up a Hilleberg Nalo. You have all this technology and you use it for all kinds of other goofy shit, but you never thought to look up how to set the fucking tent up, right? And it's like a 5-minute video. And so just goofy stuff like that. And I probably sound as I'm going off on a tangent here that I'm a total dick, but it's truly will save you in the long run. And it may not save your life, but it'll certainly save you from wasting a lot of money and potentially coming off the mountain early, things like that.
Yeah, it's funny you say the tent thing because I just got back. I was on a 5-day spot and stalk hunt in Idaho in the mountains chasing bear. I was with 3 other guys, all kind of ex-military. One dude was a Air Force combat controller, worked with like a lot of tier 1 group guys, and then the other guy was a ranger. And it was fun being in a camp like that. Like everybody was like team first and everything and squared away, but then we also still had a ton of fun. But dude, even that, like we're first night setting up shelters, getting ready to glass, and the one dude goes like, oh, and I love the dude if he's listening, like, but sorry, I want to give the example. Maybe this helps somebody else listening in the future to prepare. But he was like, fuck, dude, thank God there's like directions here. Like, do you mind giving me a hand? Like, I can't figure out like how to set this up. And I'm like, no problem, of course. But like, dude, like like right there,
Yeah.
like something so simple that you could do
Was that
just
a
in your
military guy?
backyard. And yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
But
That does not surprise
well,
me.
he was, because that's what it is. Like it was like no, well, I can't say no fault on him, but like he didn't have like a single man, so he was borrowing his buddy's shelter. Didn't really think about it,
Yeah.
and then like just packed all the way up there with that thing,
Well,
and was like, oh
when
shit,
I say
I
that
never.
doesn't surprise me, that's not casting shade on the military. It's just those guys have been beat up so much. They're just like, ah, fuck, well, I'll make it. Yeah, you know,
Yeah,
fine.
which is a great
Yeah.
like you can really use that to your
Yeah.
advantage. And I noticed that a lot out there. They are kind of just like we'll fucking figure it
Yeah.
out, which that is good to have.
Yeah.
But so I wasn't worried about him, but maybe
Yeah.
somebody
Well,
else
no, I
like
mean, I
their
just
first
had a
time.
crew of military guys here, and it was funny. Three of them, because they were all borrowing my gear, three of them immediately grabbed everything, went out in the front yard and started putting shit up. And the other two were like, it's probably a good idea. You know, did I have all the right stakes
Right.
in there and whatever else? So, and again, I would like not casting shade on the military guys, but or not all military guys, but especially like special forces, for example. They're literally sent into other countries to stay for quite some time and teach the other countries how to fight or whatever. So those guys really can operate for quite some time on very little. And that's actually one of the things too that I've laughed at over the years of with basing what you're doing off of something you learned from your buddy that was a Navy SEAL, right? And I work with the military a lot, every year. Well, Navy SEALs wear Solomon Quest 4Ds. They got to work for mountain hunting. And I'm like, yeah, well, they come back a lot every night and they leak like crazy and they're not, and it's like, look, it's not the same. And again, those guys are tough as hell. I'm not, it's not nothing to do with that, but it's like, mountain hunting is it's just different, right? And so, the biggest thing that I can, say, like, with like put your gear together and check everything before you go, even your fuel canister, screw that thing in, light it, unscrew it, and make sure it doesn't leak. Because that happened to Mike and I this year on his goat hunt. One of the fuel canisters was bad and it leaked the moment we screwed it in. It leaked out overnight and it was empty. I mean, luckily we brought a backup, but like shit just happens. And so it's always good to just be a little more prepared. Again, the taken syndrome, right? Just be a little more prepared.
Yeah.
So.
Something that I try to like even keep telling myself is like, just don't forget the main thing of like what we're preparing to do, what we're buying the gear for and everything. Like our mission is not to go out there and pretend to be a Navy SEAL or to go out there and pretend to be like, somebody on a loan.
Yeah.
Like the goal is to like kill an animal
Yeah.
and get to where the animals are. So it's like maybe somebody's listening and is like, oh, you don't need to bring a straw to get water out of a seep and like do all that crazy stuff. And it's like, well, I can attest, at least for like the few years I've been going out there, I've got a couple animals out there on the ground, and I'm telling you, some of these animals, especially just on this bear hunt we did, you got to get creative to just spike out for a night or two, especially where like some of these bears were. Like we did glass up some bears and everything. We were kind of we didn't have any spot scouted or anything, just kind of bounced around a few spots and got on some bears and glassed them up. But yeah, there was a few where it was like, okay, how the fuck like are we gonna go over there and make a play? Like that's a 2-day excursion just to kind of like get over there and set up correctly. And there's no water up here, so having that skill of being able to like filter something out of a seep or just being physically fit to pack in more water and everything, it's like that's the things that like we're preparing for, not like like you said, like here's watch me rub two sticks together. It's like not so much.
The water thing's like a good example. Like this recent class, they're like, how much water do you bring in? And I'm like, look, I've already been there, so I bring a Nalgene worth in, and I said I wouldn't carry any more than that. There's giant creek flowing beside us. And I'm like, and honestly, very rarely do I carry any more than a Nalgene on the way in. And, and that's for me carrying water when I was younger, being safe, right? And I learned over time, could that bite me in the ass if I'm not in shape? I can, if there isn't water close enough for me to walk to, when I say that scouting or whatever else, then I'm probably in the wrong spot. Having said that, there are certain places that there is no water, and for you to be as effective as a hunter as you can be, that's where like the straw comes into play. So, you know what I mean? And so, you know, trying to put things in context, I'm like, look, I looked at the map. There's a massive creek. We're in a very large drainage. There's going to be water in there. We're in the spring runoff. I'm not carrying more than an Nalgene of water in there. There's going to be water there. If you're nervous and carry, you know, 3 liters, but, you know, my thing is like, hey, this is how I do it. And so I explain my system. I got a 6-liter bladder. I hike in with an Nalgene. When I make my climb, I fill up a shitload of water, but I'm not going to carry it in 6 miles. I'm going to carry 1 liter in 5 miles, and I'm going to carry 7 liters in 1 mile, right? And I'm going to go the last mile for the climb. And, you know, that's just stuff you learn over time. And there's always multiple ways to do things. And it was actually the water filter thing was quite, you know, comical because, you know, I had a buddy, he does it one way, and, you know, everybody had those hollow core fiber filters. And I'm like, look, you know, those things are basically fucking worthless if you leave them when they get frozen. And I 3 of them backed up where they didn't work for the crew that was there that brought them. And, you know, I was like, I use the pills and this is what I do. And tried to explain it. And geographically, you can tell when someone's from Oregon, where Western Oregon, water is everywhere, right? And then you can tell someone that is, let's say, from Arizona, where water is nowhere, right? Like, so you know, you can kind of, you know, see where somebody's from by their water. And then you can tell somebody like me who has the taken syndrome where I believe I just have shit canned every system that could possibly go wrong and keep it very simple. I don't carry a pump anymore. I hardly even carry that Sterapin anymore. I just use MSR Aqua Tabs. They're very lightweight and they never fail. You know, and again, that's just, you don't have to do it my way. But if I have an extra pound of food and I can shit can my pump and I'm comfortable with that, then I'm going to carry an extra pound of food or, you know, other little beneficial items that make my life better, you know, because you kind of weighing it out. You know, you're going to pay the piper, whether it's on the way in or when you get back there, right? You're either going to go lightweight and hate it when you're back there, or you're going to hate it on the way in and really like it when you're back there. So it's kind of a plus and minus thing. But I think that, again, when you've done it long enough, your gear is your gear. You don't need a packing list. You know what's going in there. But man, when you're getting going, that's, I mean, part of what I think for some people, the funnest part of it, like people send me these very dynamic gear lists and I'm like, yeah, fuck, I haven't made one of those in a long time. Like, I mean, I'll make them to send to people, right? But I mean, my gear is my gear and it's not deviating. You know what I mean? What does change is geographically, I may change things out depending upon like this spot we're getting ready to go into for scouting. You know, we're going in 3 to 5 miles. It's a relatively easy hike in. There's water definitely everywhere. And so, like, for me, the first thing is my bug net. Like, I got a very breathable shelter. I actually reinvented the wheel. I have just basically the insert of an Argali shelter, a half cert. And then I have a tarp so I can pitch it because it's going to be hotter than the fucking hubs of hell. And there's going to be mosquitoes everywhere. So I can lay in that thing midday. Water, you know, wind is going to blow underneath it. Some people might go lightweight and just carry a tarp and no bug net. That's really horrible. I can speak from experience, right? And that's just a matter of kind of knowing. You can figure that out. Just like, oh, there's water everywhere. Bugs are going to be bad. It's June, right? Or whatever. You know what I mean? It's heating up. And then, you know, in reverse, like you look at something totally different. Like, oh, we're going to be at 12,000 feet. Not going to be much for bugs up there. Going to be high wind. I may swap shelters out, do a little bit different. I may just bring a tarp and maybe an ultralight bivy, or I may do more of a beefier tent. And that's just, again, matter of doing it enough to where you can, you know, make a good assessment. And that's the biggest thing is the distance in, the duration you're staying, the altitude gained. Like those are 3 big ones, right? I mean, those are the 3 major things you want to look at is distance and altitude gained, and then obviously weather, right? Weather's another big one.
Yeah, definitely. Like a lot of things are situation, like you got your gear list, your gear's your gear, but then a lot of things are like situation dependent. And I've found, right, yeah, a little bit. But this is all it just comes with experience, I'd imagine, and you got a ton of that. That's, yeah, great stuff there. And because it's like, and I found myself, it's almost like with the failures and everything, picking up more of these nuggets and tools to use, because sometimes, that makes a difference. Like, who's like, you have a, okay, like you can go out and hunt out west and hunt from the, like, depending on the hunt or whatever and however you're comfortable with, just hunt from the truck, or just, go a mile in, or not get far back into the basin or whatever. And maybe you'll see a few animals. But I think maybe what happens with some people is like, okay, you might just not find what you're looking for, and then you start thinking about all these other tools and skills that you can start to build to be like, okay, well, there's no water in there. I'm just going to camp in the truck. That way I have water. Well, when you're not getting on deer or elk or like whatever,
Yeah.
then you're going to learn like real quick, like, oh, okay, well, what are these like other creative ways like to get water or things like that? So I think it all just comes with time and experience and getting your butt kicked a little bit, frankly.
Yeah. And, when we, like on these courses, one of the things we talk about, above and beyond all the other things I've been rambling on is like, the end goal is no mountain too high, no distance too far. Obviously that's what you want. Like, zero fear of anything. And some of that's also going to be stuck out overnight, maybe without your shit, right? Just what you have on for the day. What do you want to have with you for the day? And how do you stay overnight and remain relatively comfortable? And then, and we go over that, right? I mean, it's really not, you don't want to get stuck overnight, but like, if you and I are elk hunting and we backpacked in 3 miles, we're away from our camp, we get on a big herd, and we're not worried about anything, right? We could get a bull down and at last light, and then you have the, okay, do we work on this thing all night and try to pack out? Or do we work on this thing all night and just sleep here? Or do we pack out and then come back? When I say pack out, to your bivvy camp or spike camp. Well, for me, I'm not going back to spike camp, and I'm too fucking lazy. I'm not going to go to my camp and go back in. But, if you're cutting the animal up, you get to protect the animal, right? Like, you being there is going to make sure nothing's going to get it. And if it does, you can scare it off. And I mean, people get worried about grizzlies, and I get that. But, fear is and panic is what kills people in certain situations like this by making bad decisions. And the thing is if you just have your day pack and you have game bags, which everybody should have, you have a way to build a fire, which everybody should have, you have your backpack, you're going to have that, probably going to have a puffy jacket or something, you should, right? So, I mean, I've explained people this is like, look, in a contractor bag, I'm like, I just put the contractor bag, or if I have game bags, I'll put one around me, throw pine boughs around the next one, have an insulation layer, pull the contractor bag over that, and then I get inside my pack, cinch it up, put my puffy jacket on, I make a little bed, get a fire going, and the fire is going to keep, the animals away from the meat, because I just hang the meat up to let it drip anyway. It's not going in the game bags. And it's like, so then I at least got 4 to 5 hours of sleep. Not the best thing, not bad. And I didn't waste the energy going back and forth. I protected the meat. I'm not going to let anything get to that. And it's aged overnight, which is great. It's cooling off overnight, and we can finish deboning or whatever. And that goes the same if you just get lost, right? Fog comes in. Don't fucking panic. Just chill, right? Like, rub one out, guy or girl, throw a dip in, right? Just sit.
Whatever floats your boat.
Try to remember what happened, right? And then, the thing is if you building a fire, to me, is the best thing. Like, build a fire, warm up, calm down, and just kind of think, like, where was I? How did I get here? Did I go uphill? And again, if you're just fogged in or weather or whatever, if you have the right things and know how to use them from experience, it'll be a mildly uncomfortable experience compared to a total survival situation. Because if you don't know where you're at, you're certainly not going to find where you're fucking going by wandering in circles scared, right? So those are the things that we really, teach in those courses as well. Is like, man, I've been so fucked up and confused before, like, badly. Fog come in. John Pinch and I looked for our shelter for 3 hours. We had fog with like visibility of probably 6 feet. And, it was one of those just bad situation, right? And fog was so thick, GPSs weren't working. And when we finally found the tents the next morning when the fog lifted, we had walked by those tents 30 feet from them multiple times. That's how thick the fog was. But, never panicked. It's like, well, I got my buddy, I guess we'll cuddle, right? You just don't want to stress. And again, you can build a fire. And, you look at like the food and water thing, you want to pack, 32 to 3,500 calories a day generally for a backpack hunt. But you can go 2 weeks without eating, and you certainly can go 3 to 4 days and still be fairly functional. I mean, people fast for 72 hours all the time. So, people get worried about that. Like they're out and they're like, oh, I'm almost out of food. I got to go back to camp. And it's like, well, water, right? You don't want to go without water for too long, but you can go without food if you have to. And that's just having the, comfort or experience to know, like, okay, I'm not going to die if I don't eat. Is it worth it? Like what's going to happen? How long am I going to be gone? When I say that, meaning if I'm stuck overnight without food, most of us are fat anyway. It's not going to be that big of a deal, right? And so, it's just getting comfortable being in uncomfortable situations. And again, just making a relatively decent decision off of what's going on. And that's where, again, like most people's decision is to just go back. And, that isn't always really conducive to killing an animal.
Right. Yeah. And that can kind of like make the difference there a little bit. And that's actually funny. The stress management thing is something that me and the buddy I was with, like he's older than me. He was the combat controller guy. Now he does a lot of training with, he trains people in the Air Force now. And he says, that's stress management. That's exactly what they teach. And it's like and he's like, that's what I see the similarity with backcountry hunting. Like who can keep kind of like the level head. And he had the example of like, that's why when we do a lot of our underwater training, like people can hold their breath for, usually several minutes, but within like 20, 30 seconds, some of these people are just like freaking the fuck out. But like, you just got to kind of tell yourself like, you're fine. And a lot of that is kind of related to there's a ton of scenarios like that. Like me and him, we actually brought these up on the mountain and we did a remote podcast and we got into it there. So that'll be dropping maybe by the time this releases. So we talk more about it there.
Were the guys that you went with
on
in
that.
the industry?
So the one dude, his name is Ryan Holmes. He works he kind of like operates it now with another guy, On Glass Adapters, the Digiscope. So it was him, and then the other guys were just like what was his buddy? Yeah. And then so I guess he's he is in the industry or whatever. So I did an episode with him up there, but we got into that kind of stuff, and it was really cool to kind of like pick his brain more on that thing, because I'm a big endurance runner too. So running marathons and ultra marathons, kind of the same thing, dude.
Yeah.
Like just being in a ton of pain at mile 50, but just focusing on the micro, like you're fine. Like just what can you do right now? Like you're fine.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, everybody has a breaking point, but you generally should never hit that on a backpack hunt. If you've hit that, you've fucked up.
Right.
Right. And so, I mean, we had somebody drop out of this last course on the way in, and my thing is like it's just walking, right? We're just walking up a trail, right? Just one foot.
Right. Sometimes that's like it might be dark, it might be cold, but like you can kind of step back and be like, dude, we're just taking a hike.
Yeah.
Like
even on really bad climbs, it's like, you don't have to race up the top. It's just steep and you're going to breathe hard, but it's just walking. It's one foot in front of the other, and eventually you get there and you get a break and it's not going to kill you. And, mindset is a big one. And, the pace can kind of screw, some people get nervous and go, but it's just walking. And, when I've taken, guiding some pretty unhealthy, or I say unhealthy, just, not as fit clients, in that, we just take 3 to 5 steps and stop for a minute, and we take 3 to 5 steps. It may take 4 hours, but we'll get there. And so, and again, I think that's where people, maybe, kind of, mentally fail. And people, Cameron he says this a lot, like the mind fails far before the body, which is very, very true. I will say though, occasionally you do meet someone that, the mind doesn't fail and the body does. And I can tell you when that happens, you are fucked. And when I say that, meaning once you're stuck in 4-wheel drive, you're not going to 6-wheel drive. You only got 4 tires, right? And so if you're one of those very few people that can push themselves past the mental pain, and then you start having like cramping issues and shit, that can get you into trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, that's gotten me into trouble. Not like touting I'm this, badass, but I mean, I've definitely pushed myself into retardation. Like I pushed myself enough to where I've about gotten myself into trouble. So as I've gotten older, I'm almost 50 now. I've gotten a little bit better of, not worrying about getting there maybe quite as fast, or maybe chilling out a little bit along the way. Cause I've certainly at times pushed myself far, far harder than I even needed to. And I hunt and get to guide with some pretty amazing people, the Lancasters being one of them. And, they're calm all the time. I say they're calm. When you get an animal in front of them, they turn into assholes. But I mean, they're calm. They'll get there when they get there. They don't worry about shit. And I mean, obviously, that's also geographically where we're hunting. The animals haven't seen people, so you don't have the stress of that. But the reality is when you've lived your entire life like they have in remote camps without power or a generator for months at a time, things that people in the lower 48 worried about, it's comical when you've done that enough. And I'm not casting shade or whatever. I'm just saying, you deal and you've been in a hunting camp for 3 months straight with just a generator and then getting flown out back and forth for a couple weeks at a time. In Colorado, I can walk across any wilderness in a day, basically. Right. So it's really not that big of a deal unless you're injured, as far as having something to stress about, I guess.
Yeah. And I think people have these, whatever, you apply it to a lot of different things. Like the hike in should only take this long, or here's a good one. I started, when I wanted to start hanging out west, I was like, I got to learn the gutless method and quartering up animals and stuff. And first time you do it might be a little bit of a hack job.
Yeah.
I think a great piece of advice, if you live back east, I don't care if you shot that buck in your backyard.
Yeah, no, that's great advice.
Practice on an animal. So yeah. So and then when you get out there, what was it? Yeah, last year, I was solo in Colorado. I was up at 12,000 feet. I rode this cow, and I have to quarter up and debone this whole thing. And I remember thinking okay, a couple hours, whatever. But I think maybe years before me, when I'm always just the first few animals I did quarter out, you have this notion of okay, this is taking too long, or this is whatever. And then actually when you're doing that quartering up an animal, if you're starting to rush and stress, that's where you cut yourself and really fuck yourself up.
Yeah.
But I was on North Slope. I had a creek right there. I had, I knew everything was going to stay cool. I got everything in the shade, and it's and I just kept telling myself, if I keep saying this should be fast, this should take quicker, I'm going to screw something up, cut myself, and then I'm really up shit creek. So it's there's no clock on things. People have, if you need to adjust your expectations of shit, we've been hiking for 4 hours and we're still not at that glassing spot. It doesn't matter. You're not gonna, so you're just adding more stress when you don't need to.
The only time I say that when I'm guiding up in BC, I definitely have more time hacks just for it is more life or death up there. Meaning we can't shoot an animal past this time because it's going to take me this amount of time to clean it. And we got to camp. But the one thing to look at, if you shoot a bull at whatever, 5:30 in the afternoon, 6 o'clock is okay, don't listen to anybody on the internet, really. Because I can debone an animal fast. I don't, but I can. When I say that,
Right.
I can speed go really fast, and I've had people when we go to cut one up that have listened to me before and say, "What do you think this will take? Done by whatever time?" And I'm like, "Oh no, probably double that." I thought you said you could do it, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, I can." But I'm not going to. There's no reason to go. There's no reason to go fast, right? It's not a race. And the other thing too is you're more careful with the meat, so it's probably not going to get as dirty, right? And you have it's a funner time when you're not fucking hauling balls through it, right? You're not stressing. Your lower back, it's you've been roofing all day, right? You can stretch your back out.
I like to throw on a podcast and just kind of
I usually do podcasts, music, audiobooks. If I've got the juice, I'll put on an audiobook and listen to. I listen to, when I'm the Lewis and Clark Undaunted Courage, I think it was called, the Lewis and Clark. I was listening to that one. And I've listened to that book, I don't know how many times, right? But, it's soothing, it's kind of a sleep aid. The guy's voice is kind of boring. And so, I'll throw that on or music and just chill. And again, it's not, you don't have to, you're only going to make it as fucked up as you want to make it, right? It can be pretty chill. Right. So, and when you look at deboning, your advice is very good. if you're hunting, especially in the whitetail world, it's almost better to practice when it's, at home anyway, right? You can really take your time. You
Yep.
can go wash your hands if you want to, or, take a break or whatever, and then, get better at it. And elk's just a big ass deer, so it's really not any different anyway. It's
Right.
just more to fuck with. But I think like with the deboning thing, people get really nervous about it. And it's like once you see somebody do it a couple times or you've done it, it's really not that bad. It's just the first time, and including me, the first time I, was doing it, it was horrible. Like I had chunks of shit, and I don't know what the fuck. When I say, like literally like
Yeah.
little chunks of meat everywhere, I didn't know what I was doing. But now it's super
Yeah, and this is
smooth.
Aron Snyder, everybody, who does
Yeah.
this, daily.
Oh yeah, no, I mean when it
Yeah,
started,
so it's okay.
it was bad, like really bad. And
Yeah.
now, and I'll just give an example of kind of the top to bottom. If we're elk hunting, whatever time we shoot it, morning's a little bit different than afternoon, but I sit there, we take the photos and do things, and I set up a spot to put my shit because inevitably you lose your shit when you kill it. You got nerves and anxiety and your adrenaline, and inevitably you hear I left my rangefinder, something. So I have like a spot that I leave my crap, meaning knives and backpack, everything gets piled there. I figure that out, and then I get all my stuff out, right? And usually I put a big dip in, and then, when I cut it, I have a certain way that I cut the animal up, but before I start cutting, I look around and find spots where I can set the meat, depending upon the heat. And so if it's places I need to peel off bark, I don't want to be carrying it over and be like, oh, and then move. So if I want to peel off bark to have a cleaner surface on a dead log, I'll get all that ready. Or, if I find tree branches because I hang it up because I want to get it as cooled and drip, I do all that ahead of time. And, and then I start hacking away with the, the system that I use. And then, by the time heat dependent and bugs, by the time I've taken all of this apart, the meat's cool and I can start putting it in game bags, because a lot of people go straight from the animal to the game bag, and the meat in the middle could sour because that heat is all condensed in the middle. It doesn't cool off. So I try to let it cool as much as possible. And if I can't do that, when I get back, I wake up, usually your adrenaline's running, you're not going to sleep worth the fuck anyway, right? So once it starts cooling off, I pull all the meat out. Bugs are gone. It's at night. And I hang the meat up and I let that cool overnight. And the next morning it should have a crust on it. And then I'll put it in the game bag. And so there's kind of a science, behind it. And it really depends, obviously, if you're in Arizona and it's 104 degrees, a little bit different. But, and then, using creeks, if you have those, I'll submerge the bags. But there's so much wives' tales, like shit that I put meat in contractor bags all the time. I'm told all the time that it's horrible to do, but I mean, we're talking hundreds of animals, hundreds. And I don't put it straight in the contractor bag unless I absolutely have to. But I have certainly used contractor bags. In BC, we use them all the time. We just throw the quarters in the contractor bag. And,
Yeah.
and it's, I'm not talking about Glad apple scented contractor bags, unscented contractor bags. And you can read on forums where guys really have never killed anything, never, you can't do it, absolutely not. And I'm like, I should have been dead, by now, because I've done it a lot. And then the other thing too is like putting meat in the creek without putting it in a game bag or a contractor bag. You certainly can. It's not that big of a deal to lay that bitch in the creek, let her rinse off, whatever. You're not going to lose. I mean, you don't want to leave it in there for a week, right? But people get super nervous, and it's like, man, if you dropped an elk quarter and it rolled down the hill, man, throw that fucker in the creek when you get down and clean it off before, while you can.
Right.
And those are things that, I don't know if you remember Arnold when he used to do the twisty thing and he did it so everybody looked stupid and copy him. Yeah. I mean,
he would do shit just to see who would
follow along,
pick up on it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like you get something, it will say something, and pretty soon it's doctrine, right? And yes, if you leave meat, for a long period of time in the creek, eventually it'll be bad. But I mean, I've certainly left quarters overnight in a creek with nothing on them, but zero issue whatsoever. And so, I mean, the whole damn thing's got a crust on it anyway if you did it right, and then if not, you've got obviously a lot of whatever you call that lath or the membrane on the outside. So you're really not losing anything when you do it. And I'm only bringing this stuff up so people don't get paranoid, right? Like the biggest thing is get the meat cool and keep it cool. So, and again, a lot of guys drop shit, right? Like they'll drop meat and it's rolled up and it's all dirty. Man, I'll go back to camp if I'm by a creek and I'll take all the meat and, dude, I clean it right there, hang it dry. It's not a big deal. So, I don't know what brought that up. I don't know. I get asked these questions all the time, and I can't. Sometimes I forget like what I should be answering on Q&As and stuff. The meat care thing is definitely something that people bring up really frequently because they just don't, know.
Yeah. And they don't know. It might be their first time or second time or the first time really far away. And it's just that, again, that stress management. And that's really when you got sharp ass knives and stuff. That's not when you want, and your, clocks could be like, ticking a little bit on your meat. That's not when you want to panic and make a mistake. Like the other thing too was like, because people have this expectation of like, it's been 2 hours and I'm not done with this elk. And like, we should be done by now. Like, what the hell? And they start rushing. Like another one would be like, a storm rolls in, and for whatever reason you think it's only going to be 20 minutes, but then when it starts pushing an hour, another example there, people just freak out. And it's a lot of it is just that stress management. And I like how you brought up to the because I think I've heard you talk about you like looking back at the history of the mountain men and stuff. And the more I've done this, the more I've like I picked up like the Blood and Thunder, the Kit Carson book, and I love listening to those kind of podcasts. Jeremiah Johnson, my whole family can quote that movie like start to end and stuff. And then Alone, I love watching that show, like just shit like that. And I've realized too, like the more you kind of like put this stuff in your brain, like you can like pull from that a little bit. Like for example, like you get an animal down, or like you go in on a stalk and it doesn't work out, and like you already haven't eaten for 4 hours and you got a 3-hour hike back to food or whatever. Dude, I find myself telling myself that shit all the time. Like, dude, there's people on Alone that go multiple days.
Yeah.
Like there's like, think about like a Hugh Glass and Jedediah Smith and all these dudes. Like, come on, like pussy. Like and I think I think that can be really helpful if people start, looking at that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always good to, it's definitely there's another Uncommon Valor. It's a Vietnam book, is another one to listen to. If you start to feel like you're a tough guy, listen to that and you'll feel like a little bitch. But like, with what you're talking about is you see memes all the time and whatever, like, do hard things, but there is some truth to that, right? Like you do want to do some hard stuff. I mean, if you got to listen to social media to do hard things, you're probably fucked anyway, but you do want to challenge yourself. And so, there's nothing wrong. I mean, occasionally, I don't do 72 hours. I'm a fat kid. I don't go that long, but nothing wrong with go 24 hours without eating. Really not that big of a deal. And it's better for your system anyway. But, when you're back there, like with what we're talking about, generally what I've seen is it just makes people come back to camp early. You know what I mean? Like, it's 3:00 and, they're about out of food, and it's like, oh man, what if I get on these elk and I don't get to, to eat or whatever. And, it's just a matter of, you're probably going to be a little bit hungry, but it's not the end of the world. My biggest thing on me is like, I can go without Copenhagen and shit, but man, caffeine, dude, like, I like having caffeine. So I actually, I have like I look like a druggie right now because I was going through my pills. I have like the little pill bottles I take trazodone to sleep sometimes, and I carry doxycycline. It's an antibiotic, or, I have my little pill stuff, but I'll take those pill bottles and I'll pour pre-workout in there, and I just keep it with me for an emergency. And I've had people give me shit that I don't take Adderall, but probably 4 times a year. But I mean, say what you want, right? This is my experience. As you get older and you beat yourself up, especially, but if we killed a bull and we're like a rough pack out, dude, I'm popping an Adderall and a Tramadol. I'm going to come home happy, right? Like I'm getting out and I'm going to be really focused when I do it. I don't do that all the time. You don't want to be addicted to it, but people are like, oh, that's really bad for you, whatever. I'm like, all right, fuck it. It is. I don't know, but I'm doing it, right? Like I don't do it all the time, but I can say, like, if you've had a really hard day and you've got a long way to go, you are going to focus more with, I'm going to get a rash of shit about this. With Adderall in your system, you have a lot less chance of getting injured because your focus is amazing. And so say what you want, I'll do it occasionally. And when I say that, if we killed an elk 3 miles in and we're going to try to get it out in one trip, cutting it up, everything else, and get it out, tramadol's popping down the throat, and maybe certainly caffeine, but maybe an Adderall, and it is important, whatever you need to function, to have that in your pack at all times. And when I say that, I'm not talking about drugs, but have backup set of contacts, right? If you're allergic to shit, have an EpiPen, whatever you need for that. And again, when I say that, meaning if you have specific prescriptions you have to take, make sure that doesn't make you go back early. Keep that in your pack. Those are important things. With me, again, like I learned that a long time ago from a military buddy, the Adderall Tramadol combo, and it works good.
Yeah.
So,
dude, I'm laughing because you said emergency caffeine, and I'm picturing like I just have one, like a couple years ago, like I have like one more or less master gear list, and then I swap things out occasionally on the hunt. But that way I can just run through the whole list. And on my kill kit section, I have an item, emergency caffeine.
Yeah.
So I put a little, dude. So the Celsius energy drinks, they make packets. Little packets. Yeah. I have one in my food bag every day, and then I put one in my kill kit because I know if I kill something, it's going to be late at night, and I want that caffeine kick because I have a little bit of maybe an addiction too. But it's stuff like that.
And if you're listening to this and you don't want to do it, I mean, don't, right? I'm not saying exactly, but I mean, most of the planet is addicted to caffeine, right? Not everyone, but I would say upper 90% drinking coffee in the morning or something, right? Yeah. And so my thing is like, even if it was a placebo, take it, right? Even if it wasn't caffeine and it just makes me think I drank caffeine, whatever helps you get off the mountain. And Matt Chan is a huge CrossFit guy, dude's a great dude. He's a stud. I think he took second in the CrossFit Games in 2013, maybe, or something. So the dude's an animal. And he told me when he killed his elk, that was the most pain he ever felt in his entire life, getting it out. Right. And different type of pain, obviously. There's a lot of, if he and I did CrossFit together, he'd probably kill me. Right. But it's different where I can pack an elk out and it really doesn't bug me that much. Right. I've done it a lot. But if there's going to be a time and place and space for you to pop some kind of a pain pill, I would say that's the time. Right. And so as I get older, like what I'm taking in my body is becoming more and more important, meaning I don't want to take in processed carbs. I don't want inflammation of the joints, right? That all is a big part of me staying as fit and functional as I can be. But at the same time, I've had a lot of mileage. And so that's, again, where, I try not to ever take ibuprofen, but I'll take that shit when I'm packing elk out, right? And that's just to help get it out. I mean, pain, it sucks. So, my little possibles pouch, like I did a video, and I had people comment like, oh, that's way too much, stuff. And I think most people don't probably listen because I'm like, hey, I don't carry all of this. These are just certain things that kind of flip flop. But when you have a possibles pouch, it's pretty simple. You want the ability to build a fire, the pills that we talked about, backup set of contacts. If you get migraines, have a migraine pill, whatever that is, there's like the 10 C's or the 10 essentials. I don't carry a rape whistle and shit like that a lot of people do. But I mean, you do want a certain amount of things in there. And it's basically what you want to, if there's an emergency situation, to be able to come through, with that. And, when you're getting your packing list together, that possibles pouch a lot of times is far more important than your clothing list, right? Like you don't have to have that much clothing. When I give out clothing gear lists, like people, it's like anticlimactic for a backpack hunt. And I'm like, look, I wear my pants in. I have one extra set of socks, sometimes an extra set of undies. I got a base layer, a fleece, and a puffy jacket and rain jacket. And that's it, right? And I think because you can buy coolness, right? Like you can buy a badass gear list. You can, and so people want to have this huge list of cool shit or whatever, which I get.
Here's my gear list. Like, just try to flex it. Yeah.
And great, nothing wrong with that. But
and that's totally cool. Yeah, but you don't need.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. And I mean,
everything.
I sell clothing, right? In gear for a living. And I mean, I certainly like if you buy really good shit, you don't need that much shit. Right, that's bottom line. If you buy good stuff, you don't need much stuff. And I think like it is daunting when you start to backpack hunt what it could cost, but I can kind of, the food wise, Steve and Dawn and I did a video on backpacking food for a budget, and I think it was 1250 a day. We were at 3,700 calories for 1250 a day for what you could buy at Walmart.
Oh, nice.
It
Yeah.
might have been 14
That's a
bucks a
good,
day,
helpful
but
thing.
not horrible, right?
Uh-huh.
So you figure it was 14 bucks a
Because
day.
think, a peak refuel, that's $14 right there.
Yeah, that was.
So if you can have your whole day, that's a smart.
Yeah, and it was
I'll
like
have to check that out.
3,700 calories for, man, I was at like 130 calories an ounce. So, we did pretty, and we broke it all down.
Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah.
So food, not too bad. And then, you can get, I don't want to go deep in on gear, but you don't, I really like nice gear. So I will say that, but you don't have to have an 850 to 900 fill down bag, right? You can get away with a lesser expensive bag. It's going to be heavier. So if you get a 650 fill bag, you're going to pay, some money for that, but it's not that big. You don't have to have the best bag. You can buy a pretty cheap tent for $269, right? You could buy a tarp and live under that. If you really want to go, Tyvek, steal it off the job site. I mean, you know what I mean? You get a flat piece of Tyvek. You can get an air pad for fairly expensive. If you really want to be tough, get a foam pad. You can get those damn near free at the Army surplus store. So, it's not as bad. The problem is, I think people start reading forums, and then, that's where they start to want to spend more money, which buying cool gear is great. I love, go in my garage. It looks like a a mountaineering store. So, but Colton Gilman is a good friend of mine, and he's a tight ass, and that dude's done some crazy shit for a very low budget. And he'd be the first to tell you, right? Like he's like, I've got this whatever sleeping bag. He loves it. And it's one where I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't use that shit. You know what I mean? But he's able to do a lot of different hunts, and his, big thing to people is like, look, do you want to go hunting a lot, or do you want to have a really good gear list and not be able to afford to go hunting? So, if you got an unlimited budget, it's a different story. But, you kind of want to take that in context, because when I say context, used shit is good shit, right? You can buy used gear for pretty damn cheap.
I bought several things off Rockside, and it's just as
Even our Army surplus store, like polypropylene, like whatever. Yeah. I mean, you can, it's not going to be the best shit, but you can definitely. Well, actually, I mean, if you're buying it on a hunting forum, it probably is the best shit, and it's from a guy like me that has a gear addiction and then sells it for next to nothing. So, I mean, if you're my neighbor and you're my size, you're probably the happiest man alive, because I constantly am just dumping off gear to guys. But yeah, I would say, I mean, on that note, like the biggest thing you want to focus on is your boots and your pack are the first ones, right? Like those are huge.
Dude,
you can.
Not to cut you off. I have a runtherackoutdoors.com is kind of like where I host the content. You can find all my shit there. So I have a website where I, have all that linked. And then I wrote a couple, blog articles on there. And one is I titled it, and I'm not pretending like I have all the experience of Aron Snyder. Like I'm not. But I'm into this. I'm in a chapter of becoming, the mountain hunter I want to be, so to speak. Of like, I'm learning all these lessons by hitting, like they're all hitting me in the face, and this is like the chapter that I'm in.
Yeah.
Like I wrote a blog article. If people want to go read it, like it's called "It's Not Your Hunting Gear" is what I called it, and I listed like all these like big popular items that are super crazy expensive, and I preface everything and say like, dude, you've said this, if you're a man of means, like go nuts, like gear's awesome. But if it's making the difference between you going elk hunting for that $800 non-resident elk tag this year, and you think you have to buy another Sitka jacket, and like you have to get the brand new bow again this year, like I'm just telling you from experience, like that's probably not the magic you're looking for. I'd highly recommend spending the money on the tag, the gas, and going on the trip to getting an experience, because that's when you're actually going to learn what you actually need to have. And then then that's the two things I said. I think maybe I had a third thing, but I definitely said I wouldn't skip on a pack and boots.
Yeah,
so,
no, and I mean the bow. I mean, bow manufacturers would agree with me. I hate they come out with new bows every year. It's horrible. And when I say horrible, it's a pain in the ass for the bow manufacturer. It gives this sense that you have to have it, every year, whatever. And I get them free. I don't know when I haven't paid for a bow in a long time, right? But I mean, I don't. It sucks because guys get wrapped up that I get it. You have to have the newest, coolest thing, and I mean, we talk about it in traditional archery. Same thing with a compound is find an arrow that works for you and turn off the fucking computer. Stop looking at shit. Like, don't go any farther, right? Fine. And a bow, if you've got a good bow.
That was me this winter. I just was like, what are you doing?
Yeah. But
no,
I mean, when I was broke as a joke, which really wasn't that long ago, I had one set of pants back in the day. It was Mammut Cormiers. It's a mountaineering pant. They're skinny jeans now, and you look like a homo when you wear them. But like, I had a set of pants, and it wasn't like, what should I wear now? It's I had one pair of pants, right? That's all I had. And you have one pair of pants, couple sets of socks. You've got your base layer. You're pretty good. And occasionally, right, you're going to upgrade certain things you skimped on, but it doesn't have to be all at once, and it certainly doesn't have to be top end, and it definitely doesn't have to be new. And quite honestly, there's a lot of products that the older stuff is quite honestly better than the newer stuff. And when I say that, bows have definitely increased, but we're talking 10% in the last 10 years, maybe, right? Not much. But you can go buy an MSR pocket rocket for like 39 to 59 bucks now, maybe, stove. And you can buy a whatever on Amazon for 39 bucks, right? Now I love the reactor. That fucking thing's like 190 bucks. So you don't have to have that. And then a headlamp, dude, I use a $39 headlamp, and I can have any other headlamp I want. And I've used a Princeton Tech Remix for a long time. So again, it's not that bad unless you want to make it, really, really bad. So.
Yeah, definitely. And there's items that you can use long term. Like I just on this bear trip had to toss, and I think this is probably your recommendation a long time ago. I've used them the last 4 or 5 hunting seasons. Really beat them up. I do a ton of backpacking, like in the summer and shit. I just love doing this shit. But those cool Renegade pants.
Yeah. Yep.
So they're great pant. I mean, they just ripped on me now, but after the amount of miles and stuff I put on them,
yeah, they're probably what,
but like
69 to 89 bucks.
60 bucks. Yeah. Don't need anything crazy. They lasted me that long. You don't need 6 pairs of pants. Yeah. But it's just things like that.
I like those pants well enough. We made some at BP to copy them. When I say copy them, I mean the same price point, same material, because we have a super high end pair of pants that's expensive, but like, dude, I couldn't always afford like the best pants. So I mean, I wore cool Renegades for quite some time. I mean, it was, and it, I mean, if you can support a hunting company, I get it, but if you can't, I'm surely not going to bash you for doing it. And when I say that, meaning like the people that I've met at Cool are good people. Like, I haven't met anybody bad there, but I mean, if it's a matter of like a brand new set of BP or Sitka or whatever pants, or having a little bit better food or a little bit better air pad, I'd get better food or the air pad, right? I mean, that, you got to weigh it out.
Yeah.
That is, it is, and Barklow and I have talked about this at length. The reason why gear is the cool thing is gear can be bought. Hard work and knowledge and wisdom, you can't buy it, right? You got to do it. And you can buy your way into a gear list. You can have front yard reviews, right? You can see them all day on YouTube of a guy that doesn't really get after it, but he's reviewing the gear on YouTube. You can do that all day long, but like, getting out there and learning is hard work, and it's free, right? I mean, when I say free, it's pretty free to go out there. And, how many times do you see somebody, out of boredom tying knots when they're watching TV, right? Not much, they should be.
Dude, I brought, cause this is like, again, like I try to take, like, people can watch the shit, but like, you just got to do it. I brought like 550 cord to work, and I had it wrapped around like the base of my computer monitor. And before, last summer I would just sit there like on a call, and I would just do my taut line hitch and just shit like that. Like,
it's a good way to do it. And I think that, people are, still listening to this after rambling on forever is, kind of, maybe make a list of your strong points. And if you're going to come out west and go hunting, and make a list of your weak points. And that's going to be a few lists. One's going to be strong and weak of gear, right? What good gear you have and what bad gear, what would need to be improved. And then strong and weak points as far as your knowledge, And when I say strong and weak points, like, there's a lot to that, but really it's going to be like the land nav portion and the knot tying, woodsmanship. Can you sharpen a knife? Do you know how to, can you build a fire? Whatever. And then, obviously don't worry about the strong points. As humans, especially if you have a penis, You're always working on your strong points because it makes you look good, right? You're always,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like you're gonna show off your strong points, and you're probably not going to work on the weak ones. And so, that's something really to kind of assess. I mean, and that's in life in general. But I mean, if you suck at knots, practice, tying knots. If you're a good shot with a bow, maybe not. Maybe don't shoot as much. Work on other stuff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I get caught up into that too. That's why the biggest thing right now, like I I look at like the cost of a lot of gear, and I would love to buy more gear and all these things, but it's like, really, dude, like I got some things that work for me, and I think I just look at things like I look at something that costs something, and I'm like, that's a tag, that's another
Yeah.
experience, and I think like that's, I know that's my weakness, and I just want to get more reps in the field, and that's where I try to allocate a lot to. And then like the fitness thing, like I'm big in the endurance ultra marathon stuff, and it's like maybe I tell myself maybe I should stop pull back from the running
Yeah.
because that's something I'm good
Yeah.
at, and e-scout more,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all about just being honest with yourself. Dude, and that's the other thing too. And then when you're doing these things like the land nav, I just thought about this when we were talking. I took that course. I try to like bust that stuff out every now and then, but you also got to use it or you lose
Dude,
it.
it's bad. It's
So
a
it's like,
perishable skill. It's like math.
yeah, it is. And I can't believe how much I struggled like out there. Like I'm with all these other people, and like
I guarantee that combat
we're doing
controller knew
our,
where the fuck he's at. Those dudes are good at what they do.
yeah, on
Yeah.
point. On
Yeah.
point. Yeah, for sure. But I mean, it's just so easy now because like we got like OnX and like the InReach, and then dude, how about now with iPhones? It was pretty cool. I was out there. I didn't even really need my InReach. I had it activated just, in case. But you can text people now, iMessage with SOS. I know. Yeah, that's we were all out there doing that. It was funny. But it's just like all these things are making it so much easier. But like at that course, I remember even being like, yeah, I'm woodsy. I hunt the mountains. Like I'm up, whatever. But no, dude. Like doing your intersection and resection, being like, yeah, it is like I felt like I was back in calculus a little bit. So that's a weakness of mine. I need to make sure I'm busting that stuff back out again, and
I mean, the
taking some
reason
time to
why
do that because I
know
know
it.
this shit's gonna fail me. This technology is gonna fail me at some
Yeah,
point.
I mean,
Yeah.
and the reason I know it, so I teach it, right? I teach it so much, it's constantly fresh in my brain. And not to throw a plug in, but if people are, wanting to come out and learn this stuff and it being very applicable, like there's lots of camps for different things, right? But this is truly the only camp that I know of that, we're actually taking you into the wilderness and you're learning it firsthand, of basically very realistic scenarios. But it's Born Primitive Outdoor on the Instagram page on mine. We'll post about them. But we do backpack in. There's a level of fitness you need, and there's a gear list. But my garage is full, so when people are like low on gear, they need stuff, they can borrow, my stuff. But if you're interested in learning more about Western hunting and want to attend one of these courses, the first one we did was free, but they're not horrible price. They're going to be between $750 and $1,000 for like a 6-day course. So they're not. We tried to keep them as low as humanly possible. And a lot of that is we have to keep horses for basically if somebody gets injured. So we actually have to pay somebody for the horses and plus the instructors.
No, cool. All sounds good, and that's where I kind of wanted to. I feel like I could go all day, but just wrapping up. Plug that. The Born Primitive Academy camps all sounds great there. People can find that. Where can people find Born Primitive? Find you. Find if they're interested in the camps. Like all these things, if you want to plug that.
So there's a
go.
Born Primitive Outdoor YouTube page, which is pretty much me going over all the stuff we've been talking about and tech tips and gear and shit. And then my page, Aron Snyder, that's on Instagram. And then Born Primitive Outdoor, Born Primitive, whatever is the website. That's for the clothing stuff. And then on Instagram, Born Primitive Outdoor. And then there's Born Primitive Outdoor podcast. So I have a podcast that I do, and that's everything from what we're talking about now to testosterone replacement therapy and insoles and all kinds of shit. So there's all kinds of stuff on that podcast.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. And then obviously you're on Instagram and everywhere.
Yeah, ARONSNYDER. And I'm always posting some kind of goofy shit on there. But yeah, no, I could talk all day too, but I think I'm going to go. My dentist is coming over to go. We're going to fish again. Like I said, I broke my rod this morning, but we're going to try to hit it again this afternoon. My schedule's been so freaking crazy with travel, so I'm trying to hit it as much as I can before I fly out again.
There you go, dude. Well, enjoy that. Have fun. Everybody go check out Born Primitive Outdoor. Check out Aron Snyder. And I'm seriously, dude, can't thank you enough for coming on. This has been awesome to chop it up on here. And guys, people listening, there's a lot of people out there talking, and if you want to look for a great resource, I can tell you firsthand, Aron Snyder has taught me a lot more than he's aware, over the years, and all things I've definitely used in the field, and can't thank you enough, dude, for everything
I'm glad.
you've done.
I'm glad I can help. And anybody that has questions within reason, I try to answer every message I get. Don't ask me anything. Don't ask me anything stupid. And I say that like seriously. If you can Google it, like if you're going to ask me the weight of a stove, I'm probably not going to answer that. If you have a technical question, you need a gear recommendation or what, ask away on my page, because I am more than happy, because I there's nothing worse than pissing away money on a piece of shit, piece of gear. So definitely feel free to reach out.
Cool. All right, man. Sounds good. I'll let you go. Everybody, thanks for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man.
Right.
Take it easy.
Later, dude. See ya. Hey, if you liked that episode, please share it with a friend, share it on your story, and give the podcast a rating and a review on wherever you listen. For more of this type of content, you can head over to the YouTube channel and follow along on all the social platforms. Really appreciate it. See you on the mountain.